Human rights to me is, on an individualistic basis, is when a person can identify as who they are or what they want to be, and it is not defined by the characteristics that someone is pointing, like trying to direct at you. So what you are, not what somebody else is telling you who you are.
I agree.
Um, I think human rights are the rights that every person on this planet has, and has the right to do. So the right to your own body and the right to life, um, a free speech and to practice your own religion, things like that, and just things that like no matter what, nobody should be able to take away from you. So it's not so much like a privilege; it's a right that you have from birth, from because you're a human who lives on this planet.
Um, to me, human rights are just the basic rights that every person deserves, no matter their background, nationality, anything like that. Just the basic rights that everyone deserves to have.
That's a hard question to answer because universally, I don't think that's a way that it could be. Just because we live in a culture specific generation, we live in a culture specific world. So to ignore that specificity, I think, would be even more ignorant than what we've already done to ourselves.
I think that human rights are universal by the definition of the word that a human right is something that everybody on this planet has because they're a person and because they're that's okay. I was gonna say because they're alive, but I feel like if it was a cultural like right, that's more of a law. That's something that's subjective to where you live and like your religion or the kind of things that you do. And I feel like in like some cultures that look down on women and don't let them like have free speech or have free will or things like that, like um, it's kind of oppressive. It is oppressive, and that would not be considered like a human right because while they may think like, oh, this is how our people live, this is their rights. In all reality, because like the women in those societies are alive and are on this earth, they have the same rights as everybody else.
Yes. I think universal because, um, like before I was saying, it's just kind of it's important that everyone is able to express themselves or have those rights, and especially now, just for women as an example, just the way they're treated in a lot of other cultures isn't fair, and they're denied these simple rights that in other countries that a lot of us here in America just take for granted. I feel like, but then again, it's hard because with cultures they've already developed this, and so I feel like it's a hard question to answer. But if I had a choice to decide, I would want the human rights to be universal.
I think a lot of people don't agree on what serves as universal human rights just because there's so many definitions of what it means to be human. And like I said, it's on an individual basis. Like me and you might not agree on what it means to have a human trait or what it means to live differently or live alike. And I think we have a really big issue with that because like we keep bringing up the word ignorance. It's because we really don't know each other. We see each other, but we don't know each other. Like we see these Syrian refugees, but we don't know who they are. We don't know what they need. We don't know what their agenda is. We make assumptions based off of appearance and what's happening in the world around us, no matter how misrepresented it is.
And so that I feel like it's a choice. Like you choose to not get to know them. You choose to not talk to them. You choose just to not know someone just because you just don't want to. You have no specific reason to. You just choose to.
I think people disagree because a lot of the societies and cultures that they've been raised in are very traditional or very strict, and so the rules that they've been taught, are like the rules, the guidelines to society and stuff, are very strict on what you can and cannot do, what you can and cannot say, practice, whatever, things like that. And obviously, like religion and culture governs a lot of people's lives really heavily, but that isn't always the same. Obviously, isn't the same everywhere you go, and so different cultures, different societies, and countries and religions do things differently, and that causes a lot of butting heads in terms of what a human right is and what you see as right and what others see as oppressive and stuff like that.
I think people don't agree because, like, everyone has different viewpoints on things, and especially with, um, when it comes to women, especially, and not in other cultures, it's here as well. It's just some men just don't agree, and so it's just hard because even in times like we were trying to enforce having a woman as a president or women in other cultures who aren't able to express themselves, and it's just basically because you have the discrepancies of different people. So it would be nice if everyone universally could have the same human rights, but just won't happen.
They are migrating to these countries because one, they may not have another choice. Two, they could just be getting themselves out of a bad situation into a worse one, and they are having the bravery to uproot their entire life and their lifestyle to take on a new one. But it's not based on anything but what they were told or what they might have seen that, like I said, could have been misrepresented. Like, there's this whole idea that there is an American dream, but we get older and we realize that's not a thing. Success is only based on your own merit. And when you look at what we have based success on, that's not true at all. It's based on who has the most money, or who has the most privilege, or who was born into the right family, or if you wear the right skin color. And we may be going into a new generation where that might not seem to matter, but the older generations are still here and they are still running things. So that is still going to be reinforced in the hiring process and through the news.
Which I agree. And also, like you said, the older generation is in charge right now. But I feel like it's only a matter of time. And depending on how we communicate with each other, and depending on how we raise our future generation, is pretty much, I feel like this generation is a generation of change. And change is happening all around the world. Like, it's not just in the United States, it's all around the world. And personally, like, people migrate. My family migrated to the United States because they thought they could have a better life here. And in all honesty, it is a better life in a way than what they would have had back in Mexico. The opportunities that we get, even if we're not privileged, even if we're not the elite, it's still better than the opportunities you would get in Mexico. But that's me coming from Mexico to here. Now, other people have different experiences, different stories, but I feel like we all kind of just come here to seek a better life. And it's not always to have money or to just, sometimes you just want to smile. And if you talk to a lot of people that migrate, they pretty much will tell you the same story.
They just want to be happy.
They just want to be happy. They just want to enjoy their lives.
I like that a lot, Fernando.
I feel like just one for personal preference, just them wanting curiosity. Also, one being just to live a better life, which is usually the main reason why people especially come to America, because they want those rights that they're being denied a lot of times in their own country or within their own culture. So they see going to another country as an escape, I guess, or a way to start a new life for themselves. So that's what I think.
I think it saddens me a lot of the time that there's a lot of misconceptions about this group of people that have been terrorized in their own home country, which is why they had to leave, and they are misrepresented by a group of individuals who are a part of a terrorist organization with their own agenda. And a lot of people in America are seeing is that we have to protect ourselves from them coming into our country, when really we created ISIS. We have our own ISIS family going on here in the United States. And a lot of them are covert operatives. So really, it's not a question of where you came from or who you are, it's what your agenda is. And I think that's what got mixed up in this whole craziness with the attacks and the bombings.
I agree, Tim. I mean,
I feel like who cares? Like, not even in a mean way, but I feel like why do you care where these people are going? They are literally just trying to escape. Like, there's some really scary things that if they were happening here, like everyone would be just as scared as them, if not more, because we're like privileged people. And so honestly, a lot of most states actually have like decided to like close their borders and not accept Syrian refugees, and like a lot of people have been like complaining like why would they come here, but at the same time if that was happening here we would be doing the exact same thing.
For me, it doesn't have a huge impact on me. I think that for them, if they're coming here to live a better life, then I welcome that because they are wanting to start a new life and leave behind, how they were treated. So I'm okay with it.
I think that is it's a very big fear, and it's a very big possibility that a lot of people who aren't even of the culture that is said to be represented by ISIS are a part of ISIS. Like I said, America created ISIS. There are Americans who joined ISIS. They all push that agenda. So it doesn't really come down to like about the fear of who may or may not be, and it's the fear of what agenda people have when it comes to this terrorist organization that is made up of other terrorist organizations that are joined toward one joint cause of bringing down America and other societies and religions and cultures for their own gain.
I feel like, well, that is I get that, I guess, kind of, because there is that stereotype that like I don't know, like Muslims or whatever refugees are like terrorists, which is a dumb idea because there's always that chance. There's always a chance that somebody on a plane is going to be a terrorist. There's always a chance that somebody crossing the border isn't going to be a good person. And like you can't let that fear affect the lives of all the people who are on the plane or are crossing the border who are good people. And while that could be a possibility and that is a scary thing to think about, I think that while we could create ways to like try and maybe weed out the bad people, scary terrorists, we still have to think about the people who are suffering because of ISIS.
I think what I think about the Paris attacks is the instantaneous support they received was quite beautiful. And I think when it came to other attacks in other countries, they simply just weren't as well received by the media because we can only cover one thing at a time. But also, when it comes down to who we're supporting, France has always been an ally for us. So they were always really going to be a focal point for what the U.S. media was going to focus on when it came to attacks outside of our own country.
I think that what happened in Paris is really sad and sucks. Obviously, all terrorist attacks suck, but I feel like it got an unjustifiable amount of coverage in the media and in the news because of where it is, and it was in a developed country that is like majority white, and I don't know if that's controversial to say, but it got more coverage than the things that ISIS has been doing in Africa, like in like Syria and places like that. Like these things that are happening to people every single day, the things that people are trying to escape by migrating out of their countries, happen to them all the time, and we only pay attention when it happens in places like Paris. And I think that's really messed up.
Educate them. There's a lot of difference between there's a lot of different Islamic religions, there's a lot of different Islamic beliefs, and there's a lot of different Syrian beliefs and religions and things like that, and people confuse the two, and it should not be synonymous with one word, and that word should not be terrorism, and that word should not be foreign. Like I said, when we go back to the human rights question, these people are human, but we mitigate that fact with ignorance. And I think it's only through a lot of learning and through a lot of love that we can really start to overcome what it means to see past what it means to have human hatred.
I agree.
You concur?
I concur.
I feel like if we try and educate these people who have prejudices towards Syrians and Muslims, we would be able to like largely eradicate them, because the prejudices they have are extremely stereotypical and like I've said dumb a lot, but they're dumb. Okay, they're dumb. And by educating them on the fact that not all Muslims are terrorists and not all Syrians are gonna steal your food, like it's not that hard to just teach people and explain it to them in like logical terms so that they will know better than to stereotype an entire group of people.
All right. So, in my own words, human rights, I believe, are having the right and the freedom and the ability to think and do for yourself. The right to life. I feel like basic human rights are things that are like given when a person is born, and governments with poor human rights records actually tend to have more conflicts with other governments. So say take North Korea for an example. Personally, I believe they have poor human right records, and so they have problems with the United States, who would have better human right records than North Korea. So human rights should be understood as universal, but right now in this time and age, they're understood as culturally specific because everybody has a different mindset. So one nation might not agree upon what another nation would say on what they believe as basic human rights. So yeah, they should be universal, but they're kind of culturally specific. People don't agree on what serves as universal human rights because everyone's different. Every culture, every religion is different. So one culture might not agree on a consequence for stealing as another country, and so because of that, we don't agree on what serves as universal human rights. So people migrate to different countries because they are looking for opportunity, opportunity that they didn't have in their own country. So they're moving to a different one because they want to live a better life. Another reason would be because they're fleeing, and their home country is unsafe and is unlivable. They're in their home country, they're at a risk of being killed. And so they moved to a different one where they could feel safer. So the thing with the United States taking in some of the Syrian refugees, I feel like is a good thing, even though some people might disagree because they're like, well, what about the thousands of homeless veterans we have, or we have our own homeless people that we need to take care of, which I understand that is also bad, but every nation, every country is going to have there's are going to have homeless people. And these Syrians, they're not voluntarily leaving their home like, I don't want to be here anymore, let me go to the United States. They're they're being attacked and bombed in their in their homes, so they have no choice. It's either stay here and die, or move to another country where I will be safe. There's always going to be a fear of some of these refugees like being involved with ISIS, or have more terrorist agendas, but that's like with everybody. Like there's not everyone coming to the United States or going to another country are going to be coming and going with good intentions. And so, yeah, that's scary and there's a fear, but that's a risk that, people are going to have to be willing to take in order to help out a greater cause. So about the Paris bombings and the coverage it received, yeah, it was sad. It was really bad, and I liked how it received a lot of coverage and was on the spotlight, and people changed their backgrounds on Facebook in support of it, and that was really good. But there's other nations and countries that were being bombed and are receiving little to no coverage. If I didn't take this class, I would have only known about Paris and their bombings. I wouldn't have known that Baghdad was attacked 3 times, or Egypt was attacked and had over 200 people killed, because it's not something that I saw on the news. In my personal opinion, I don't think you can really solve the biased feelings towards Syrians and Muslims, or anybody per se. There's always going to be stereotypes. Every race, every class, every religion, every nation, have their certain stereotypes that are always being portrayed throughout the media, and trying to steer away from that is really hard when people are being taught these things from generations to generation. And so, I mean, educating would be, the initial first step as to, kind of getting rid of some of these biased feelings and stereotypes. But, I mean, also, people can't be so ignorant to these stereotypes and biased feelings. So, education and, also people are going to have to change the way they think about a certain group of people.